Dr. Stormwater, Jeff Featherstone. And he has quite the track record working with stormwater throughout our region, Act 167 plans and other kinds of floodplain remapping. Take it away.
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you to my colleagues who allowed me to sit here in the middle of my 2.7 flies from Sam's Club. So I can see Chris was talking earlier about French Creek versus the Wissahickon, and this sort of tells the story. This diagram really should be talking about evapotranspiration, but put that aside. You see a significant difference when you urbanize and you do not have stormwater controls. And there are sections of Ambler as well as sections of North Wales that approach 100% impervious cover. So that's all runoff. And that's really why we have the problem that Chris so aptly described. This is a nice hydrograph that shows, just relative speaking, what happens or what a French Creek looks like compared to a Wissahickon or a stream segment that has a lot of runoff but no controls. Basically, what you see way off to the right is your base flow, and unfortunately, there's very little of it in the Wissahickon because most of it is runoff, as also shown by Chris. Fortunately, because we didn't have stormwater management until the 1980s, most of our piping systems simply collect water and dump the water directly into our creeks. And that's created many of the problems we have downstream. This is what we see, and we've walked many of these creeks, and this is what a lot of them look like downstream from these outfalls, and it's not a pretty sight. Kind of a more difficult problem is our headwater streams, and it's almost as if 30, 40, beyond even that, we didn't think that they existed, and basically roads and developments were put in with no regard to these headwater streams. Now we've got problems because these are the feeder streams that we ultimately rely on for creating a healthy environment, and a lot of these will be requiring major fixes to get them up to speed. We finally got religion, excuse me, with respect to stormwater in 1978. The first laws really didn't start happening until the 1980s. Unfortunately, they were focused almost exclusively on detention. Detention is absolutely necessary, but you need more than detention to adequately manage stormwater. And this is one of the early detention sites. You've seen them all through the basin and everywhere else. They're just big holes in the ground. And they work really great for that, but we need more. Unfortunately, a lot of these sites are located on private property. They're not maintained. There have been basins I visited that I don't think have ever been maintained at all. So the municipal systems, particularly in some of the more aggressive municipalities, I see Paul Leonard here, they're cleaned up and they're doing a good job. And unfortunately, this is the way a lot of them look. And this is a nice depiction of what happens when you put in a detention facility. And you can see the top peak with peak flow after construction, no controls, the way it was 30, 40, 50 years ago. This is before, the green is before. And then you see the red, which is peak flow after construction with controls, in this case, detention. Unfortunately, many of these facilities are put in without a basin-wide or a watershed plan. And actually, many of them were working to create greater runoff problems instead of reducing the runoff. So you needed the watershed plans as well to dictate how these particular structures should be built. And unfortunately, that wasn't done for about 25 years. Flooding, this is a shot that people in Ambler are very familiar with, West Ambler neighborhood. Interestingly, this area was not mapped by FEMA as a flood zone. So, you think it's flooding here? Another issue, we've been building in the floodplain, and of course, That increases our natural floodplain storage. We're also increasing the land area needed to store water. And this is a pervasive problem. The little title here, today's floodplain is not necessarily tomorrow's floodplain. Whenever we make changes in the floodplain, we're creating a new one. Unfortunately, many of the maps, and most of the maps, are not kept up with these activities, and we got problems today. Here's a classic case. This is the West Ambler neighborhood, Whittain Township. It was the area that I showed you a picture of before. It's not mapped right now. We recently completed a study for 3 municipalities in this area, and now we proposed mapping here as well as extensive areas of the 3 municipalities to make up for that problem. That's my contact information, and I'm turning it over this way.